Wang Yip.
Shawn Kanungo.
We have a very special guest today. We are here at the Meyer Horowitz Theater in Edmonton, and our special guest today is Seth Godin. How are you feeling?
I am excited. I've told all of my friends. They think I'm a celebrity now.
Well, I know Seth Godin is one of your favorite authors, maybe even the most famous author, and your favorite author as well.
Possible, yeah, definitely.
What are you most excited about, in terms of asking him about this new book, The Practice, Seth Godin? I know you've dived through it. What are you most excited about asking him?
Yeah, I love the fact that Seth Godin he says things that we're already thinking, and nobody has really put it so succinctly or concisely or precisely as Seth does. And The Practice was that book for me. It was just something that I've been thinking a lot about as well, but just never had kind of the right, book or the right author voice it in such a way that Seth does.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to just explore a little bit more about what The Practice means to Seth.
I mean, I think the reason why Seth is the biggest marketing legend in the world, the most renowned marketer in the world, is not because he has all the strategies and the tactics and understands all the digital media nuances and will tell you how the TikTok ad platform works. But the reason why he is the best marketing mind on the planet is because he puts things very simply and he makes us think, and all his thoughts are simple but provocative. I was chatting with you last night in preparation for it, is that he does this thing where it's so subtle, but you'll ask him a question, like the most benign question, like, Seth, I don't know why I don't like spaghetti, and he'll say something like really like profound, like, but you are the spaghetti. Like, it's just like really, oh man, anyways, that's a bad example, but he does such a great job of that. So yeah, I'm really excited about this, Wang, and I'm really excited for you to be here with me, because I know we've been talking about Seth for years.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And, let me give a little bit of bio for Seth, if I could. So Seth, from his website, Seth's an author and entrepreneur, and most of all a teacher. He runs Akimbo, he runs Alt MBA, he runs a number of very, very successful workshops. And he's had 19 best-selling books. And The Practice is the 20th book, also likely a bestseller, I think. And, he founded 2 companies. He founded Squidoo, Yoyodyne. And, I don't know if you know this, but, we all know that he's kind of a legendary marketer. So he was inducted into the Direct Marketing Hall of Fame, and that was back in 2013. But in 2018, he was also inducted into the Marketing Hall of Fame. And, I'm not a marketer at all, but he says that he might be the only person in both. So we have a fantastic guest, and we're here to talk about The Practice. And let me, just give a little bit of a background on The Practice. So The Practice is about shipping creative work. And I like to think of it, and I think you like to think of it, as kind of the process that we go through. And you and I have chatted a lot about kind of just doing the work, putting it in, developing the skill, getting better at it, kind of choosing the right audience. And so everything that we've talked about, I think, Seth just stole our idea and I'm just joking. So Seth published this book, The Practice. It's about shipping creative work. There's a lot of really interesting, different ideas in there. And, I'm excited to talk to Seth about The Practice.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it. It's time.
Amazing.
Well, Seth, we are so excited to have you here at Theater Talks. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I hope that the refreshment stand sold out, popcorn, jujubes, the whole thing.
Well, Seth, Wang and I are really big fans of yours, and Wang actually has a funny story about when we had a previous podcast, we actually called it The Dip, and we actually emailed you. Wang, do you want to tell them a little bit of a story?
Yeah, so Shawn and I went about to start a podcast called The Dip. And of course, it was based on your best-selling book, The Dip. So we thought, hey, we should probably get some permission from Seth to see if it's okay to release a podcast under the same name. And I remember emailing you and just thinking, oh, Seth's like way too busy. He's not going to respond at all. We'll probably just kind of go ahead with the dip. But lo and behold, I think it was like a couple days later, we got a response from you, Seth. And I think it's you because you've mentioned previously in other podcast interviews that you do answer email, and email is kind of a bad habit or a vice of yours. And so you responded and you said, yes, I'm good with it, as long as you don't attribute it in any way to the book itself. And so we have a running joke, Shawn and I, every single start of the dip episode, it's no longer around, but every single start of the episode, we would say, this is Wang and Shawn from the dip, and the dip is not associated with Seth Godin in any way, shape, or form. And it was just kind of our running joke. So thank you so much for, of course, giving permission to use the dip as a name. We thought it was a brilliant name for the book, and we thought it would be a brilliant name for our podcast. So
terrific. Love to hear that.
Fantastic. Well, Seth, we're really excited about talking about the practice. This is book number 20. I don't know how many authors get to number 20, but this is a big achievement. In your long list of books, where does this sort of stack now that we're like in this pandemic? Where does it stack among the best Seth Godin books of all time?
Well, you don't have kids, so you don't understand what it is to have to. You have 2 kids, so which one's better?
Well, I don't know if I can answer that publicly. I can give you a private response later. No.
There you go. So, I wrote this book before the pandemic. I edited this book during the pandemic. I read the audio book in the summer of the pandemic, and there's nothing in it I want to change because it's a book about making things better. And the only way to make things better is to ship creative work. What it means to do that is to do something that might not work, something human and something generous. And I'm thrilled that I got to publish this book in this moment because the world definitely needs to get better.
Well, we thank you for it. It was an amazing book, and I think you went almost even back to the roots of being a creator, being an artist, putting things out, shipping. I want to ask you this first question. There's been a lot of talk that now we are living in the greatest creative revolution that we've ever seen. People are talking about this being a creator's economy, that not only that you can pump out art but you can also monetize it better than any other time in history. And you have been writing about this for decades. Do you feel like this conversation has changed over the last decades as we talk about the creator economy and how we monetize? I'd love to get your take on that.
Okay, so monetization has a couple elements that are really important to it. The first one is it traditionally has been based on scarcity. There is no shortage of podcasts. There's no shortage of videos. There's no shortage of any bit of content that could be monetized. And since there's no scarcity, it's much more difficult to have a home run. That, a full page ad in Ladies Home Journal used to cost $100,000. There is no website that's charging $100,000 for a banner ad because you could just go somewhere else for less. So on one hand, the lack of scarcity creates a difficulty in truly hitting a home run. On the other hand, it creates opportunity, a long tail, as Chris Anderson would say, for lots of people to show up with their work. The thing that's super important is that people who live on the long tail, who are creating work for a smaller audience, do not get attached to the outcome. If you are doing it to monetize the work, you've probably made a mistake. If we look at the iTunes store, the typical iTunes song sells 2 copies a year. If we look at the podcast world, the typical podcast has maybe $100 a month in revenue. You're not going to be able to reliably monetize your content. You need to make your content for a different reason, and if it gets monetized, that's okay.
I totally agree, and I think the nuance today is that there's way more platforms that now you can build an audience. You know, Kevin Kelly talks about, 1,000 true fans. You're seeing platforms come out like Substack for newsletters or Patreon, OnlyFans, and all these sort of niche platforms coming up where you can have a very small audience and monetize. I haven't heard you talk about some of these emerging platforms where people can monetize. What do you see, do you think there'll be more platforms in the future? I'd love to get your take on what you see coming out of these platforms.
Oh, there's no doubt there are going to be more platforms. The thing is about the long tail. You are better off owning the whole thing than being one of the slices of the thing. And what we know is that most Kickstarters fail. And the reason that most Kickstarters fail is because someone hasn't done the hard work of being trusted. Someone hasn't done the hard work. It should be called Kick Finisher, not Kickstarter. And they show up and they hope that they will be discovered and that they will be picked. So most of these platforms are agnostic. iTunes, Amazon, Kickstarter, they pick very few winners because they don't care who wins. They make the same amount of money from everybody. So if you are a creator, I'm not really sure it matters too much which platform you pick. I think it matters that you have found a group of people who need you, want you, miss you if you were gone, and then you try to monetize it. Not show up and say, I've come up with a new charger and you should send me money.
So I'm gonna wait for Wang to ask the next question, but I just have a follow-up question to this. I agree that you should be able to put out your content and or your art out there in the world and don't get so romantic about what platform it is. But distribution does matter. I'm gonna give you an example. Cobra Kai, this movie that just came out on Netflix. It was basically lounging on YouTube for years, and then it got picked up by Netflix and now has become a global sensation because of course Netflix is global. So in that sense, doesn't distribution and having the right platform matter in that sense?
Well, we got to be really clear about what distribution means. Distribution used to mean there are only 4,000 movie theaters. Either you're in the theater or you're not. If you're not in the theater, you don't exist. On the internet, distribution doesn't mean that. My blog can be seen by everyone in the world except people in China, right? That if your video is on YouTube, it can be seen by a large number of people. That's not the issue. The issue is promotion. And what Netflix has figured out how to do, which most agnostic platforms have not figured out how to do, is have a point of view about promotion. That Netflix can make a hit. The thing that Steve Jobs completely missed about the iTunes store is it is a terrible discovery mechanism. It is a terrible promotional mechanism. It's just completely agnostic. They just don't care. The same thing's true with the Android store. Whereas in the old days, as much as you might not like the gatekeepers, they were really good at exchanging money for promotion. I could walk into Barnes & Noble with a briefcase full of money and end up at the cash register at every Barnes & Noble. That would make my thing a bestseller. You can't walk into Amazon with a briefcase of cash and have them do that because Amazon's mantra is we don't sell anything, we sell everything. And the people who work there pretend they can apply taste and pretend that money can be used for promotion, but they don't really mean it because it's all run by an algorithm.
I love that. I love that. Wang, I know you had a whole bunch of list of questions here.
Yeah, so Seth obviously tried to do a little bit of research and try to understand some of the other interviews that you did. So there was an interview that you did with John DeJulius, I think, about customer service, and that was in August. And I really enjoyed that story of kind of that paperclip where you started out at the company and I think you were kind of, because the names were in terms of ordered in terms of hiring dates. So you just kind of attached a paperclip, and he often says, I think he called you a contrarian, and I think you disagreed there. But one of the points that I wanted to ask you about is kind of there's a point around how you said leaders and this whole imposter syndrome, leading is voluntary and to be led is voluntary. Do you want to talk a little bit more about kind of how, because the way that you put it, the imposter syndrome kind of, and that uncomfortableness of being an imposter just makes a whole ton of sense when you actually said it. But how did you kind of figure that out or get to that conclusion?
Okay, so let's unnest some of these things. First of all, management and leadership are not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Management is an industrial activity. It's important. Can't have fast food without a fast food manager. Managers tell people what to do, make sure they get there on time, they get them to do what they did yesterday faster and cheaper. Managers have authority and power. Leadership has to be voluntary. There are some managers who lead, but leadership says, I'm going over there. Who wants to come? And if someone is following you because they want to, you are leading. If they're you because they have to, you are managing. And so what does it mean to be a leader? What it means is you have voluntarily signed up to go somewhere no one's been. You've voluntarily signed up to do something that might not work. And if you are actually leading, then you should feel like an imposter because you are one. You are an imposter because you can't prove that it's going to work. That someone who says, I am a comedian and I'm performing tonight is an imposter because they don't know that they're going to be funny tonight. They don't know the audience is going to get the joke tonight. They're acting as if. And so the question is, what should you do when you feel like an imposter? When you feel like a fraud, a fake, somebody who's showing up without a license or a certificate, how do you make the feeling go away? And my answer surprises people. My answer is, you can't, you shouldn't, because you are an imposter. That in that moment, you're performing an act of service, generously choosing to lead, and in the back of your head, you know that it might not work. That's what makes it art.
I love that.
Yeah, so different question here. So I think in the book, The Practice, and we got an advanced copy, so thank you for that. You talked about kind of the idea of good, quote unquote, and that if you deliver to the audience you choose and you create it for a specific purpose, that is answering the two questions, who is it for and what it's for. But if it doesn't achieve its mission, either you were unlucky, incorrect, or what you created didn't match what you set out to do. And I just wanted to explore that idea of luck in the practice. Why are some people luckier, let's say, quote unquote, than others in kind of getting outcomes, even though they shouldn't be, as you said, outcome oriented? What is that role of luck in the practice, if at all?
Okay, so the mathematical nature of luck is that in a situation where random things are happening, some people have to appear to be luckier than others. That's what makes it random. But in the act of creative work, there are two other factors. First of all, there's compounding advantage. People trust certain creators more than others. So if you're Richard Serra and you've been making magnificent, important works of art for 30 years, when you come out with a new form or structure, you get the benefit of the doubt because you're compounding the advantage you have that happened because you earned it. And then the second factor is good taste. And good taste is knowing what your audience wants just a little bit before they do. And that is not luck at all. That's a skill. So people who show up with hit after hit after hit have good taste. If I think about, the Beatles were super, super skilled, but they also had the good taste to decide which records not to release, which songs not to record. And so by choosing correctly, they were just enough ahead of their fans to create this juggernaut of what looked like talent that wasn't talent at all. It was skill, persistently showing up. So my argument is we show up as an unknown and maybe we get lucky. And if we get lucky, then we can persist and extract ever more value from our initial advantage because we get the benefit of the doubt.
Right. But on that note, Seth, the idea of doesn't the innovator's dilemma come into play, where when you start shipping and you start building a following, you start building, fans. Now there is more pressure to succeed or come out with even more creative work. How do you continuously disrupt yourself in order to, keep on putting out even better work instead of just putting out that incremental work? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, you started the conversation by talking about monetization. And it's entirely possible that the right thing to do is not to be an artist anymore and to be a productive hack who serves the audience and gives them what they want over and over again. So if you're Heinz and ketchup catches on, you should keep making ketchup because people want ketchup. And that run lasted 80, 90 years. And it wasn't until salsa came along that their lack of innovation caught up with them. So I don't think monetization is the point, particularly for the individual creator. I think you have to make a promise to your audience. So in Bob Dylan's autobiography, which is largely made up, he tells the story of what happened after he went electric. So he was a folk musician, and he was famously booed at the Newport Folk Festival for bringing an electric guitar. And he said to his promoter, I want you to book a world tour where I go to the same city every year, 3 years in a row, over and over again to the same cities. And the promoter said, that's absurd. You got to spread it around. And Bob said, no, I don't want to do that because the first year I show up, people will come in expecting the old Bob Dylan and they'll be disappointed and they won't like the show. And the second year, only the true believers will come. And then the third year, they'll bring the new fans. And those are the people I want to make my music for. So Bob walked away from monetization and he walked away from pleasing the existing group so he could make the art he wanted to make for the long haul. And that's an intentional act, right? That after I wrote Permission Marketing, I got an offer to write the Permission Marketing Handbook and then the sequel after that. And I could have become the permission marketing guy and monetized that. But I said, no, I don't want those fans. I want fans who want me to write something new.
No, I love that, Seth. Diving into the practice, it's really a playbook for the artist, for the person who wants to ship but is waiting. This is something that I see all the time with my friends is that they want to ship, right? They want to put out content. They have the ideas. They want to put it out in the world. But the thing that stops them is the fear that somebody will judge them based on the art that they put out. So of course they don't, whether it's a video or a blog or an infographic. How do you get people over that fear of shipping? It's great to say to ship, but how do you actually get somebody to go off and actually ship?
Well, it's entirely possible you don't care enough. Just like you don't care enough to run a marathon. I can't tell you how to run a marathon without getting tired. And I can't tell you how to ship without being afraid. If you care enough, you will realize that the fear is a feature, that it is a compass. It is telling you where to go. If you don't care enough, you can whine all you want. There's 100 places to hide. I can't help with that. I'm here to tell you that there is a practice. It works better than not having a practice. Having a practice exposes you to emotions. Having a practice puts you on the hook. And if you would rather not be on the hook, then I don't know how to help you.
I love that. Wang, you had another question there.
Yeah, so one of the chapters about It's a Conspiracy talked about how Andy Warhol kind of traveled in a pack and, he didn't change the whole world, but he kind of found a small viable audience and tried to change that and challenge and change his cohort. So I was wondering, kind of related to that, do you have any advice on how to find and build that cohort? Is it, just finding people with similar intents as you, or is that something that you have kind of any advice or stories around building that cohort and finding those people?
I think you would be amazed at how many people want to be seen by you, at how many people want to be picked, at how many people want to be invited. And if you were doing it generously and you say to 3 people, can we get on a Zoom call once a week? most people will say, yeah, I want to be part of a circle like that. I'm going to get more out of it than you will. And you shouldn't look for mentors. Mentors don't scale. You should look for peers who will push you. And we don't do it because we're afraid we don't have anything to offer. And they don't do it because they're afraid they don't have anything to offer. And so we end up alone.
No, that's great, Seth. You know, the one of the pieces that really resonated with me in the book is this idea that authenticity is a trap. Authenticity is a trap. And to be honest with you, that was one of the most shocking headlines that I've seen, because the only thing that I've heard over the last couple of years is the idea that leaders should be authentic, that they should say what they mean, that the authenticity is the most important thing that we should strive for. Can you explain to the audience what you were trying to say by this idea that authenticity is a trap?
So let's start with this. If you need knee surgery, or you need an eye test, or you need someone to fix your heating and plumbing, do you want to hire a consistent professional, or do you want to hire someone who's going to authentically show up as their true self?
I want somebody who will just do the job consistently.
Yeah. In fact, we want the same thing when we go to a concert. We want the same thing when we go on a date. That we want someone who's going to put in the effort to show up with generosity and care and not have a tantrum. Tantrums are for toddlers. Toddlers are authentic. After we're done being a toddler, there's no room in our culture for authenticity. We call it authentic when we said something that didn't work and we feel bad and we wanted it to work. Oh, I was just being authentic. No, actually what you're saying is you tried something that didn't work. But human beings do things that work. I only speak English. I speak English because from a young age when I spoke in English, it worked. And so I speak English more. And we do the same thing with lots of elements of our life. So no, we don't let you off the hook because you're pretending to be authentic. What we're saying to you is, you showed up telling us you wanted to contribute. You made a promise. You made a promise as to what sort of leader you were going to be. You made a promise as to what sort of creator you were going to be. Keep your promise. And that feeling you have inside that you feel like you want to share with us because it's, quote, authentic, it's no more real than anything else. It's just a symptom of your fear.
But it's still real authenticity. It's not a fake authenticity.
Nah, I'm not buying it. Not buying it.
Huh.
That if you're a cop in these troubled times and you are feeling really afraid and you burst into tears when you're supposed to be doing your job, that's one of the many feelings you're feeling. But you're doing work. That's why the subtitle is Ship Creative Work. And so you're not allowed to just blurt out whatever's in your head. You're not allowed. That feeling is one of many feelings you've got. We select from our feelings and pick which ones to share. But we do it in service of the change we seek to make. If it's not going to help you make the change, then you should grow up and keep your promise, or you should be clear and honest and say, I can't keep these promises anymore. I'm going to go do something else. I'm not asking people to live a life that eats them up. I'm just asking them to make promises and keep them.
Love that. Go ahead, Wang. We the way that we organized this was that we didn't want to go over each other, so we I'm gonna ask a question, and then Wang's ask a question. It's democracy.
You guys are a little like Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
Talk more.
Well, we're kind of he's
like that,
he's
yeah.
the straight and narrow. I'm the wild and crazy. That's how we have designed it.
Yeah, so Seth, I know we're kind of jumping all over the place, and hopefully you're okay with that. But yeah, so I mean, just so many good kind of nuggets coming from the book. One of the things that you talk about is domain knowledge, and one of the things that I found, and I'm a huge fan of your books, and I just want to say that I've bought kind of almost all of your 19, 20 books. Now I even have kind of that big book that you called
Big enough
to kill a small mammal, which I really enjoyed. What does it sound like when you change your mind? So love all your books, and I find that with all of your books, you have these kind of small, like stories, vignettes, these anecdotes that kind of help to either establish a point or prove something. And I'm just wondering, it's kind of related to what you talked about in the book about domain knowledge and knowing everything that has been pioneered and what's to come. How do you kind of get all of these stories? Like, where do these stories come from? Do you have kind of specific books that you used for research for the practice, and I guess what does that kind of look like in terms of how it relates to coming up with these stories and small anecdotes that are relevant to the theme of the book?
Everyone has these stories. Everyone. I just don't waste them. I practice them. I put them in front of people and repeat the ones that work. But I refuse to believe that I am seeing things in the world that are invisible to other people, right? Like Don Norman, the great design critic, wrote about the Norman door. And I don't know if you know about the Norman door. The Norman door is a door that you can't tell from looking at it whether it goes in or out. So you get there and you have to guess, do I push or do I pull? And he hates Norman doors because it's incompetent, it's malpractice. So he's not the first person who noticed that doors were poorly designed. He just decided to tell a story about them and name them. And that is part of the work of making change happen. What do you see in the world? Can you describe what you see in the world in a way that other people will hear you and remember it? So that's my practice. That's part of my work. If I see something in the world and I can't figure out why it's working, can't figure out why it is the way it is, I try to figure it out. I ask myself questions about it. But I have no special source. There's not some big book I look these up in. I just notice things. All of us can notice things and decide how to make them better.
But you got to be you got to be a really avid reader. You got to be reading articles and you got to be reading books all the time to get some of these amazing nuggets.
Well, no, but domain knowledge means, have you done the reading? Domain knowledge means you don't show up in a music studio without understanding who Gil Scott-Heron was. You don't show up in the music business without knowing who Bob Lefsetz is. You just don't. You got to do the reading.
Yeah.
And I've done the reading, and lots of people have done even more reading than me. The difference is that now that everyone's got a keyboard, some people think they are entitled to their opinion spreading even if they don't do the reading. And it's not true. You're not allowed to pontificate about epidemiology and matters of life and death. You don't understand what R naught is, right? You haven't done the reading. So don't start playing in an arena if you're not willing to do the homework to understand what's come before.
A lot of armchair epidemiologists definitely over the last number of months. That's for sure. You know, on the note of reading, in the book, you have a piece and you give a nod to Simon Sinek on the Infinite Game. And it looks like you were a big fan of the Infinite Game. And actually, it actually relates very well to the practice in this idea that there is no winner or loser at the end. It is you have to enjoy I keep going into my mind the process, because that to me, you call it the practice, I call it the process. But anyways, the idea of the infinite game, can you tie it to the idea of shipping?
Sure. Yeah, so Simon's a good friend. The original Infinite Game book is very special. His book is special as well. When you play baseball, you seek to win. Baseball is a finite game. It has rules, it has a beginning, it has an ending, it has a winner. But if you're playing catch with your kid, you don't throw the ball as hard as you can trying to win catch. You can't win catch. The goal of catch is to play catch. And as we move from a scarcity-based world to a world of connection and thus abundance, the purpose of the game is not to win the game. The purpose of the game is to play the game. And we play the game to help the other person also play the game because connection is the goal. And so the infinite game is simply this concept of, if I have $10 and I give each of you 5, I don't have any left. Even if it's Canadian money, I don't have any left. But if I have an idea and I give it to both of you, I still have the idea. The idea is worth more because we shared it. It goes up in value because connection and idea spreading are worth more. And so the infinite game of our modern age is to stop looking for, how do I keep this away from other people? How do I make the bestseller list and keep other people out? And instead say, how do I convene and create connection to create opportunity instead?
So, I know in my life, there are moments where you think that this is going to be the thing, right? You put out this piece of this work, or, I remember when I got like a TEDx once, I was invited to a TEDx and I'm going to speak there and it's going to be amazing. And then this thing is going to go on TED and it's going to go supernova. And then, I always find for myself, anytime I have those moments where I think something is going to pop and this is going to be the moment, or this is going to be the thing, it never happens. And then I always have to remind myself that it's actually not about the outcome. It's about putting in the work and showing up, and you never know what's going to hit. That to me is really important. Is just to put in the work, and then maybe some nice things will come out of it. Have you had this moment yourself where you're like, you're just like waiting for something to happen, and then when it does, maybe there's you put something in the world and it just falls flat?
Or worse, it works. Just careful what you wish for, because you might get it. This is not about the outcome. Getting attached to the outcome destroys the work. This is about the work. And if an outcome helps us do more work, that's great. And if people don't get the joke, if it didn't resonate, okay, it was worth a try. How do I do better? But hustle is a real problem. It's a real problem to, no one wakes up in the morning hoping to get hustled. Hustle, shortcuts, figuring out how to trick people, figuring out how to get attention, building these funnels, SEO, all that stuff, it just takes away from our ability to do the work we're proud of. Do the work you're proud of, small enough that you can afford to do it again. Small enough that you can afford to do it for the right audience. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Earn trust, improve your taste, get better domain knowledge, repeat. It's an infinite game. Infinite means it goes on for a very long time.
Love that.
So Seth, in terms of kind of reaching the smallest viable audience, and I know you also talked about kind of Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans, you reference that a lot.
Actually, I referenced it as well in this interview, but yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Shawn. Yeah. So in terms of that smallest viable audience, I mean, is there, how do you know, an audience is kind of small enough that, it's enough for you, I guess? I mean, is it 1,000? Is it kind of smaller?
Okay, so
than that?
it's small enough when they all have something in common that you can address. It's big enough if addressing what they have in common is sufficient to let you play again. So a small enough audience might be smaller than you think, but the key is you need people who want you to do what you want to do. You can't pander to people who don't get the joke, right? So, there was a webcomic called Perry Bible Fellowship.
Yes.
It was absolutely hysterical. And not that many people read it. XKCD, unbelievably good stuff, right? Randall does not need to explain his references to cosmology because it's only for people who know what cosmology is.
Right.
That's enough, right? If you think about it, XKCD led to one of the most successful books of the year 2 years ago. It has made it so Randall can do whatever he wants, and almost no one reads it. Smallest viable audience.
Love that.
Awesome.
Wang and Seth, we're almost out of time, and I know it's almost dinner time where you are. I want to ask you, when Brian Koppelman comes over to your house, What do you cook them? Because I know you're big into cooking. What do you cook Brian Koppelman? I know you guys are really good friends.
The last time he was here, we had Korean food, including banchan and an array of pancakes and sweet potato noodles.
Love that. I know you're a big dal guy, but I'm East Indian, so listen. Anytime you want some dal shipped to New York, we could do that for you. So.
I had makhni dal for lunch today.
Oh, there you go.
So there you go.
Wow. That's your favorite, I think. Wang, I'm going to give you the last question. We're almost out of time here.
Yeah. So outside of kind of the books, any kind of, I know that Akimbo, one of the organizations, or kind of the founder of it, you run a number of workshops, the Bootstrapper workshop, the Creative workshop, Alt MBA, the Marketing Seminar, which is just received an email about it. It's starting up again. Is there anything surprising that you've kind of learned through running these workshops? And I like the distinction between workshops and online courses, kind of the focus on the people aspect of it. But in terms of insights or lessons or anything surprising, anything that you can share with us today?
Two sides of the same coin. Most people want to watch a lecture, learn nothing, and walk away. We don't help those people. Some people, if you give them a chance to do the work on their work and help other people with their work, it changes their life. And so we made a decision 5 years ago to ignore the first group. And even though the other group is 1/20th the size, help them. That's the kind of work you need to do if you're an artist, is you walk away from the masses, you don't pander to people who aren't going where you're going, and instead commit to making the change you're capable of making.
I think that is a beautiful statement to close it off. Seth Godin, we are so humbled and honored for you to be here today. We're excited for the book dropping this week, The Practice, number 20. Thank you so much for joining us here at Theater Talks with Wang and I. It was a pleasure.
Thank you both. Keep making this ruckus.
Awesome.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
we'll see you. Take
All
care.
right, guys.
Bye-bye.
Guys,
Bye.
thanks, Seth. We appreciate it.